Have you ever felt like life is moving too fast, clutter piling up around you, and your mind racing with worries? You're not alone. Chaos, whether in our homes, thoughts, or emotions, can feel overwhelming. But here's the truth. Calm is within reach. With a few simple shifts, you can create a life that feels lighter, clearer, and more peaceful. Today, we'll uncover 15 powerful steps that will help you trade stress for serenity. Ready to take that first step? Let's begin. 1. Start small. The 5-minute declutter rule. I used to look around my house and feel completely overwhelmed. Every drawer was filled with things I hadn't used in years, and every surface seemed to collect clutter faster than I could clear it. The idea of tackling it all at once? Impossible. Then one day my friend Martha shared something that changed my perspective completely. Don't think about the whole house, she said. Just start with 5 minutes. At first, it sounded too simple, but I decided to try it. I set a timer and focused on one tiny space, my nightstand. In just 5 minutes, I tossed old receipts, put away the books I wasn't reading, and dusted off the lamp. By the time the timer went off, I felt lighter. So I did it again the next day. This time, it was my kitchen junk drawer, then the bathroom cabinet. And before I knew it, my home started to feel calmer, room by room. If you've been avoiding decluttering because it feels overwhelming, try this. Pick a small area, one drawer, one shelf, one corner, and spend just 5 minutes clearing it. When the timer goes off, stop. If you feel like continuing, go ahead. If not, that's fine too. One small step leads to another, and before you know it, you'll be walking into a home that feels lighter, calmer, and more peaceful. 2. The 1-year rule. Letting go without guilt. I used to hold on to things for all the wrong reasons. Clothes I hadn't worn in years, gifts I didn't love but felt guilty getting rid of, stacks of old magazines I promised myself I'd read someday. One afternoon, while helping my neighbor clean out her closet, she turned to me and said, "If I haven't worn it in a year, I probably won't." That simple rule stuck with me. I went home and looked at my own closet. Sure enough, there were dresses I had forgotten I even owned, sweaters with tags still attached, and shoes I hadn't worn in over a decade. Why was I keeping them? The answer? Guilt. The guilt of money spent, gifts received, or the what if of needing them in the future. But here's the truth. Things are meant to be used, not stored away collecting dust. So, I made a decision. If I hadn't worn or used something in over a year, it was time to let it go. I donated bags of clothes, passed along unused kitchen gadgets to friends who would actually use them, and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. If you're holding on to things out of guilt, I encourage you to try the 1-year rule. Ask yourself, have I used this in the past year? If the answer is no, it's time to give it a new home. Because when you free up space in your home, you also free up space in your mind. 3. Creating a clutter-free sanctuary. My mother used to say, "Every home needs a calm corner." At the time, I didn't quite understand what she meant, but as life got busier and my home started to feel more chaotic, I finally got it. There's something powerful about having one space in your home that is completely clutter-free, a place where you can sit, breathe, and feel a sense of peace. For me, it started with a single chair in my living room. I cleared away the stacks of magazines, put a cozy blanket over the armrest, and set a small vase of fresh flowers on the side table. It wasn't much, but it felt like a breath of fresh air. That chair became my quiet retreat, a place where I could sip my morning tea, read a book, or simply sit in silence. And that little change, it made my whole home feel calmer. If your home feels overwhelming, Start by choosing one small area to turn into a peaceful retreat. It could be a chair, a bedside table, or a reading nook. And clear it. Add something that makes you happy, like a candle, a plant, or a soft pillow. And let it be your daily reminder that calm is possible. Because when we create calm spaces in our homes, we create calm spaces in our hearts. 4. Quieting the mind. With simple daily reflection. I used to wake up each morning with my mind already racing, lists of things to do, worries about the day ahead, and thoughts about things I should have done yesterday. By the time I had my morning tea, I already felt drained. Then, one morning, I tried something different. Instead of diving straight into the day, I took 5 quiet minutes for myself. I sat by the window, felt the warmth of my mug in my hands, and let my thoughts settle. And in that small moment of stillness, I realized something. Peace starts in the mind. Now each morning, before I reach for my phone or get lost in the noise of the day, I take a moment to pause. Sometimes I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. Other days, I simply take deep breaths and watch the world outside my window. And let me tell you, it changes everything. If your mind feels cluttered, try this. Set aside 5 minutes each morning just for you. No screens, no distractions, just quiet reflection. Write, breathe, or simply sit in silence. Give your mind a moment of peace before the day begins, because a clear morning leads to a calmer day. 5. Learning to let go of unnecessary worries. One night, I lay awake in bed, worrying about my children, worrying about an upcoming appointment, worrying about things I couldn't even control. And then I thought about all the times I had worried before. Times when I lost sleep over things that never even happened. How much of my life had I spent tangled in what-ifs that never came true? That's when I decided to ask myself a new question. Will this matter a year from now? More often than not, the answer was no. So I started practicing the art of letting go. I reminded myself that not every thought deserved my energy, that I didn't have to solve every problem in my head before it even happened. And slowly, my mind felt lighter. If worry has been weighing you down, try this. When a thought troubles you, ask yourself, will this matter in a year? If not, release it. Imagine placing it in a balloon and letting it float away. Not every worry is worth carrying, because peace isn't about having a perfect life. It's about learning what to hold on to and what to let go of. 6. Creating a simple, calming morning routine. I used to wake up and immediately turn on the news. Within minutes, I felt tense, bombarded by negative headlines, loud voices, and problems I had no control over. Then, one morning, I decided to do something different. Instead of reaching for the remote, I reached for a book. I read a few pages while sipping my tea, took a few deep breaths, and let the morning be quiet. That day felt different. Lighter. I realized that the way we start our mornings sets the tone for the rest of the day. If we begin to feel stressed, the whole day feels rushed. But if we start in calm, that feeling stays with us. Now, I have a simple rule. No chaos first thing in the morning. No overwhelming news. No jumping straight into tasks. Just a few minutes of peace. If your mornings feel rushed or stressful, try this. Start the first 15 minutes of your day with something that brings you peace. Whether it's stretching, listening to soft music, or just sitting in the quiet. Let your day begin with calm. Because how you start the morning is how you set the tone for everything that follows. 7. Setting boundaries. With toxic people, I used to think being kind meant always saying yes. Yes to favors. Yes to listening to endless complaints. Yes to relationships that drained me. I believed that being available made me a good friend, a good mother, a good neighbor. Then one day, after hanging up the phone with a friend who did nothing but unload her problems on me, Without ever asking how I was, I felt exhausted. I sat there and thought, why do I keep allowing this? That's when I realized something important. Kindness does not mean being a doormat. So I started making small changes. I didn't always pick up the phone right away. I stopped over-explaining when I said no. I allowed myself to walk away from people who only took and never gave. And guess what? The world didn't fall apart. In fact, I felt lighter. If you've ever felt drained by certain people, it's time to set a boundary. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Start small. If a conversation leaves you feeling worse than before, step back. If someone never respects your time, stop rearranging your schedule for them. Your peace matters. And protecting your energy is not selfish. It's necessary. 8. Surrounding yourself with positivity. There was a time when I didn't even realize how much the people around me influenced my mood. I had friends who loved to complain, who saw life through a negative lens, and who made every conversation about what was wrong rather than what was right. One day, I had lunch with an old friend I hadn't seen in years. She was full of life. She talked about new hobbies, books she was reading, and things that excited her. I left that lunch feeling energized, and that's when I saw the difference. Some people drain you, and some people lift you. From that moment on, I made a decision. I would spend more time with people who made me feel good. I didn't cut anyone off, but I chose where I put my energy. I started calling the friend who made me laugh instead of the one who always had a crisis. I joined a local book club with women who inspired me, and my world changed. If you're feeling stuck or low, take a look at the people around you. Do they lift you, or do they drain you? If it's the latter, start spending time with those who bring light into your life. Because energy is contagious, and you deserve to be surrounded by people who make you feel good. 9. Practicing self-kindness. I once caught myself saying something in my head that I would never say to a friend. I spilled tea on my blouse and immediately thought, how could I be so clumsy? Then I paused. If my friend had done the same thing, I would have said, oh, it's just tea, no big deal. But why was I being so unkind to myself? That was the moment I realized how harshly we talk to ourselves. I made a promise to start treating myself like I would a dear friend. If I made a mistake, I would laugh it off instead of criticizing myself. If I looked in the mirror and didn't like what I saw, I would find something to compliment instead of something to fix. And let me tell you, it made a difference. If you've ever caught yourself being too hard on yourself, try this. When you hear a critical thought in your head, ask, would I say this to a friend? If the answer is no, then change the thought. Be gentle with yourself. Speak kindly, because the voice you hear the most, your own, should be one of love, not judgment. 10. Creating a slow, intentional life. I used to rush through everything, cooking, cleaning, errands, always thinking about the next thing on my list before I'd even finished the first. One day, I caught myself eating lunch while scrolling through my phone, barely tasting my food, barely noticing the moment. And then I thought, why am I rushing through my own life? So I tried something different. Instead of wolfing down my meal, I took my time. I noticed the texture of the food, the warmth of my tea, the way the light hit the kitchen table. For the first time in a long time, I felt present. That's when I realized something. Life isn't meant to be a checklist. It's meant to be experienced. Now, I practice slowing down. When I wash dishes, I focus on the feeling of warm water on my hands. When I walk, I listen to the sounds around me instead of rushing to my destination. And life? It feels fuller. If you find yourself rushing from one task to another, try this. Do one thing today with full attention. Drink your coffee without distractions. Take a walk without a destination. Let yourself be fully in the moment, because life isn't something to get through. It's something to savor. 11. Moving your body for mental clarity. When I was younger, I thought of exercise as something I had to do, a chore, an obligation. But as I got older, I started seeing movement in a different way. One morning, I went for a short walk, not for exercise, but just to breathe. The air was crisp, the birds were singing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely clear-headed. That's when I realized movement isn't just for the body, it's for the mind. So I stopped thinking about exercise as something I should do and started thinking about it as something that made me feel good. Some days, that meant stretching in the morning. Other days, it was dancing in my living room or strolling through the park. And the more I moved, the lighter I felt, not just physically, but emotionally. If you've been feeling sluggish or weighed down by stress, try this. Move your body in a way that feels enjoyable. Not because you have to, but because it makes you feel alive. Because movement isn't about how you look, it's about how you feel. 12th. Limiting media and news consumption. I used to start my mornings by turning on the news, thinking I needed to stay informed. But before I even finished my tea, I'd feel anxious, bombarded by negative headlines, endless problems, and things completely out of my control. Then one day, I turned off the TV. Instead of watching the news, I sat by the window and listened to the birds. I read a book. I wrote down 3 things I was grateful for. And do you know what happened? My day felt calmer. That's when I made a change. I still keep up with the news, but in small doses, on my terms, not as background noise. I choose when and how I consume information, so it doesn't consume me. If the world feels overwhelming, try this. Limit your media intake for a day. Instead of turning on the news first thing in the morning, do something that makes you feel good. Read, stretch, or simply enjoy a quiet moment. Because you don't have to carry the weight of the world to live a meaningful life. 13. Finding joy in simplicity. I used to believe happiness was found in big achievements, trips, grand celebrations, or once-in-a-lifetime moments. But the older I get, the more I realize true joy is in the simple things. One morning, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of tea. The sun was just starting to rise. Birds were singing, and the air was cool and crisp. It was such a small, ordinary moment, but in that moment, I felt completely at peace. That's when I understood. Joy isn't something you chase, it's something you notice. Now I look for it everywhere. The laughter of a grandchild, the feeling of warm socks fresh from the dryer, the way a handwritten note makes me smile. These are the things that make life feel full. If life feels heavy, try this. Pause and find joy in something small today. Savor your coffee, listen to a song that lifts your spirits, or watch the leaves dance in the wind. Because happiness isn't about waiting for big moments. It's about finding magic in the ordinary. 14th, letting go of perfectionism. I used to believe I had to have everything just right. The house was spotless before company arrived, my hair styled before running an errand, every task done before I could sit and relax. But one day, I realized something. Chasing perfection was exhausting me. It happened when I was baking a cake for a family gathering. I had planned for it to be perfect, but when I pulled it out of the oven, the top had cracked. My first instinct was frustration. I wanted to start over. But then my granddaughter walked in, looked at the cake, and said, "That looks delicious." She didn't see the crack. She saw the love that went into it. That's when I realized no one else was holding me to this impossible standard. I was doing it to myself. So I let it go. The cake stayed cracked. The gathering was wonderful. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't stress over the little things. If you've ever felt like things have to be perfect before you can enjoy them, try this. Let something be good enough today. Leave the dishes until morning. Wear an outfit that makes you feel comfortable instead of worrying about how it looks. Because life isn't meant to be perfect, it's meant to be lived. 15. Ending the day with gratitude. I used to go to bed thinking about everything I didn't get done, the errands I hadn't run, the calls I hadn't made, the little mistakes I had replayed in my head. And let me tell you, it made falling asleep nearly impossible. Then, I started a small ritual. Each night, before closing my eyes, I thought of 3 things I was grateful for. Some days, it was something simple, like the taste of a good meal. Other days, it was something bigger, like a heartfelt conversation with an old friend. And do you know what happened? My mind stopped racing. Instead of falling asleep stressed, I drifted off feeling content. Gratitude is a simple shift, but it changes everything. It reminds us that no matter what kind of day we had, there is always something good. If your mind feels restless at night, try this. Before bed, think of 3 things, big or small, that made you feel thankful today. Because a grateful heart is a peaceful heart, and peace is the best way to end the day. You've made it through 15 steps to move from chaos to calm. Small changes that can lead to a life of peace, joy, and clarity. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which step resonated most with you? Drop a comment below and stay tuned. Next time, we're diving into how to rediscover confidence at any age. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because this journey is better when we do it together.